Welcome to my Bob Thurman podcast. I'm so grateful some good friends enabled me to present them to you. If you enjoy them and find them useful, please think of becoming a member of Tibet House US to help preserve Tibetan culture. Tibet House is the Dalai Lama's cultural center in America. All best wishes. Have a great day.
This is episode 279. Hey, Noble Ones.
Hey, Noble One. At this time, the great red wind of evolution will drive you from behind, fiercely, unbearably, terrifyingly. Don't be afraid of it. It is your own hallucination. A frightening, thick darkness draws you from the front, irresistibly. You are terrified by harsh cries, such as strike, kill. Don't be afraid of them. Heavy sinners will see cannibal ogres brandishing many weapons, shouting war cries, kill, kill, and strike, strike, get him, get him. You will see ferocious wild animals. You will be hunted by troops in blizzards, storms, and fogs. You will hear sounds of avalanches, flood waters, forest fires, and hurricanes. In panic, you will escape by any means, only to stop short on the brink of falling down a yawning triple abyss, red, black, and white, bottomless and horrifying. Actually, this triple abyss means fleeing inside his own subtle nervous system, and that's the central channel, with the red and white channels on the right and the left, and the dark blue one that looks almost black in the center. And he's seeing that from inside, his more subtle mind. He's still hooked up, that means, with his body, and to some extent. Hey, Noble One, it is not really an abyss. It is lust, hate, and delusion. Right. The lust is the red one, hate is the white one, and delusion is the black one. You should recognize this as the moment of the existence becoming between. Call upon the Lord of great compassion. Pray intensely. O Lord of great compassion, spiritual teachers, three jewels, I am named so-and-so. Please don't abandon me to the horrid states. Don't forget me. And they always say, call on Avalokiteshvara. This was another little experience that I had. And I think it's when I finally was convinced of the sincerity of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, about after knowing him for maybe 35 years. Because he always says, that although he thinks Buddhism is best for him, he does not presume, he critically thinking about it when he was younger, he stopped thinking it would be better for anybody else. And they have their own karma, and whatever their religious thing is better for them, he decided. And it doesn't mean all versions of it or all interpretations of different religions, because they're very much different among themselves. But he said they have all access to reality themselves in their own way. Even secularists do, humanists, secular humanists. So he did that. And then, I always thought, well, yeah, but, because of course I love Buddhism a lot. And I think it's great, although I was never that religious, but I do like it. I think it's very, very sensible. It makes sense to me. So in a way I was thinking, well, he says that, and it's part because he doesn't want people converting Buddhists away from Buddhism, and he doesn't want Muslims doing by forcing people to be Muslim and blah, blah, blah. And I had maybe a little doubt about his sincerity. And then one day I was, I forget what it was, but I guess in the TV, I saw one of those, fundamentalist TV preachers, and people were flipping out, Jesus, Jesus. And then I realized Why would Avalokiteshvara want some people who, when they called out to their Lord of great compassion, like Jesus, why would he want them calling out to someone whose name they couldn't pronounce? What would be the point of that? Why not call out for Jesus? 2 syllables. What a groove. No problem. And then I realized how truly sincere he really was. I did. Jesus is such a nice, easy name. Isa, in Asia, they say Isa. Anyway, never mind. So, okay. Those who have gathered merit, virtuous and sincere in Dharma practice, are entertained with various delights and enjoy various excellent pleasures. And those dominated by delusion, who have neither strong virtue nor strong vice, have neither happiness nor suffering, but feel only stupefaction and indifference. So he doesn't really say those dominated by hatred. What happens to them? They fight. But in a way, he's referring to the ones who feel they're being chased by people and are frightened, and so people want to harm them, and wild animals are attacking them, and so on. So in a way, that's why he doesn't deal with, because there are always those 3 things, greed or lust and hate and delusion. Those are the 3. It's called the 3 poisons. They're the most important ones. Oh, noble one, whatever happens along those lines, don't crave. Don't long for pleasures or joys. Offer them all to the jewel of the spiritual teacher. Abandon attachment to them, even without any visions of pleasure or pain, with only feelings of indifference. Set the mind on the experience of the great seal, free of both concentration and distraction. That is most important. Well, of course, that's like great perfection. That's Dzogchen type of statement. Great seal is the highest enlightenment experience. And it's where you fall in love with the universe. And you realize that the universe is in love with you. So you see everything as an expression of the love of the universe to you. That's the seal, like a seal when you seal in wax with a pattern. And everything in the universe loves you, whatever it is. And you love all of it, of course. And therefore, it's like a complete melting together of you and the universe. It's called the Great Seal, Maha Mudra. And that's not easy to do, but set your mind on it, he's just saying. And don't just be indifferent if you're neither, if you're sort of in the middle. But realize that you and the universe are one, and that you both are created by the big energy of the universe, the clear light of the void, which is the clear light of love and compassion, of the bodhicitta, the spirit of enlightenment. Free of both, and you don't have to concentrate on it, and you don't be distracted away from it, because you let it just be there. But it's not that easy in a way. But it might be easier in the stress, dangerous moment in the between, where you're completely, if you have a moment of greed or a moment of anger, it just has a really powerful thing. Like wind, wind is the element of wind is defined as motion, movement. It doesn't mean just a breeze. What I blow on my hand, there's the wind element is there, the moisture element is there, the temperature element is there, the fire element, and the solidity element is there. Because the wind part is only motion, the motion part. And you all know the 8 stages of dissolving? Have you gone, because since we're doing that, I'm assuming from Andrew that you all have previously studied the earlier parts of the Book of the Dead, or this kind of thing. So you know what the 8 states are, where you progressively lose connection to your different sense fields. Sight, hearing, touch, smell, taste. Actually, hearing is almost the last one. But, these have to do with your different parts of your sensitivity, right? And finally your whole body goes to sleep, like like you don't feel your body, right? I mean, you know that. And that's where you have earth, they call it earth melting into water, water melting into fire, fire melting into wind, wind melting. People say air, but that's wrong, because we think of it something still when we think of air. But wind means it moves, and then wind melting into space, or which is also called consciousness. And this is when you are completely, subjectively speaking, you're free of your coarse body, but you're not free of your subtle body. So your energy is still present inside your subtle central nervous system, what we would call, or what they would call the subtle body, right? You know all this, do you? And then there are three states of the subtle body, the three elements of the subtle body, and three states of the subtle mind. Do you know that? The three elements are the channels, winds, and drops. And the winds here are more subtle winds. They're not the coarser, like outer wind. They're like inner, like electricity almost, that kind of movement, just pure movement. And like a nerve impulse, and that's wind at this stage, and that's the body, that's the subtle body. And the subtle mind is the mind of what I call luminance, radiance, and immanence, which is a moonlit sky, a sunlit sky, terribly bright, and a dark lit sky. You know this? You know this? And then finally there's what's called the clear light experience. And people wrongly think when they see a bright sunlight or the white, beautiful, luminous moonlight, they think that's the clear light, and it isn't. It's light, but the clear light is a more subtle kind of light, because it's a light that is already there. In other words, it's not shining from one side to one thing on another. So it's a light that is beyond the duality of light and dark. And the simile for it is the pre-dawn twilight that he's referring to here, Everything is like a pre-dawn twilight. Remember he said? Wherever he said it, I don't know. But that point is, that's actually clear light, is that pre-dawn twilight. But I don't think he thinks that you're seeing it there, but he's suggesting it to you. But that's a weird light, right? Because everything is that light. So that it doesn't shine from one thing on another. Because it's when you hit clear light, you become aware, if you hit it with awareness, become aware that everything is clear light. And so there's nothing to obstruct it. And also, therefore, it no longer moves. Because it's everywhere. Its mass has become infinite, like it is the speed of light. And you don't know that. I don't know if you know that. I didn't know that. I don't know if any of you are physicists, in which case we might have a debate about it. But I once heard from a Livermore lab at UC Berkeley explanation online. I read it online about photons. Right? A photon is supposed to be a particle of light, right? And when we talk about, well, my optical nerve, the photon bounces off the wall, and then I see the orange wall because light reflects off it, right? And it goes to my nerve, right? And it's a particle. We talk about particle. Well, to my shock and horror, somebody asked the question, since light always moves at 186,000 miles a second, that's pretty fast. And when it hits a mirror, it reverses instantaneously and keeps going the opposite direction. It reflects off that. Where does it get the energy to suddenly reverse direction? Since it is our kind of energy itself, but the mirror doesn't have any energy, how come it suddenly goes 186,000 miles the other direction? So this super physicist, he says, well, that question has brought up something we don't normally discuss. Well, what is that? Well, there is no such thing as a photon. He said, what? I'm like, why? Well, because light is not a particle. Point about light, why the speed of light is an absolute for Einstein's special theory, is that when anything moves at that speed, its mass becomes infinite. So it doesn't move any longer because it's everywhere, that means. So how can it be a particle and really be light? It's some precursor to light. And to be convenient and to talk about something in the at the event horizon before it becomes actual light, we talk about photons because it makes us able to understand how you see things. It gives us a way of talking about it, but it shows that their way of talking about it's not like there's an objective photon sitting out there, which is some pretending to be a particle when actually it's everywhere already. I love it because this is exactly the thing about clear light. The clear light is this infinite energy that shapes all relativity. And that's what voidness is. You know, when they say clear light of the void, like the voidness radiates it, but voidness is everything. The matter is voidness. Voidness is not the space in which everything takes place or arises. They was having everything. Because the translators are all into arising all the time. I don't know what they must not like getting up in the morning. They constantly translate words for production and creation as arising. Everything is arising. So point is, nothing arises from clear light. Everything is clear light. You follow me? Everything is emptiness. All space is emptiness, but also every solid thing is emptiness in space. And emptiness is the fact that none of it all is non-relational. It's empty of any non-relational thing. Isn't that simple and easy? That's why it's relational. Do you follow me? So the discovery of emptiness by Buddha is discovery of relativity. Do you get it? So that means, what that means is, it can't become nothing. In a way, one of the important emptiness is the emptiness of nothing. So, but in a way, that means that nothing is a concept that we have opposite of something. But this is really important because if you think about this, and it's not complicated, it is not, it's simple. If you think about it, then it means you're already in the clear light. We all are right now. It's so clear light. And so therefore, when people say, I saw the clear light, you know they're making a mistake. Because nobody can see the clear light, because your seeing itself is also clear light. Okay? And you're going, I is clear light. Okay? But that's all relational. And you see these lights that are in the subtle level below the super subtle clear light, what they call super subtle. And that's why it's a little bit mysterious and it's a little bit unexplainable. So all our explainings are kind of giving us vectors of getting to the idea that we're already where we want to be. And but why don't we enjoy that? Why don't we enjoy being in the great seal or in the great perfection or in the bliss void indivisible? Why? Because we don't know that we're here. Because we have our misunderstanding veils, obscures to us our deeper awareness of being here now, being everywhere now almost, that we are interconnected with everything. And we are, in a way, everything. Each of us, and not only that, but every cell in our body, every particle, every atom, every cell, every molecule, every subatomic particle, and every energy that is below particles is us. And if we work at it, we can open our awareness into various deeper and deeper levels, and we can personally seek. We can find dark matter and dark energy, and we might never see clear light, but we can know that we are clear light. And once we know that, then we can shape our existence, and we can be really helpful. We become a Buddha. But by knowing it, you don't leave the coarser level. You don't have to, because the coarser levels are also the same clear light. Right? The tip of your nose is clear light. Clear light likes to be your nose. That's one of the things it does. My nose is emptiness. Emptiness is my nose. And then in the same sutra, it will say there's no nose, But that means there's no nose like I think I have a nose that's not anybody else's clear light. It's my nose type thing. Well, there's none of that one I can't find actually. That's why they say no nose, no eye, no ear, no nose, no this, no that. That means that the way I perceive my nose as a problem normally, so sometimes I like it, but sometimes a problem, then that is, when I say no nose is to get me to realize that my nose is clear light actually. In fact, that's what it really is. So everything is really okay. And live or die. And even you're in the Bardo, you'll be okay. And you don't be afraid. And you won't be afraid. And if you want to be in a nice Buddha land, you'll go in a really bright light. And if you want to go back to Scranton, and you can go there, I wear a mask. This is really important. So that's why, if he did it, I didn't do it. He says, even without any visions of pleasure or pain, with only feelings of indifference, set the mind on the experience of the Great Seal, free of both concentration and distraction. Because you see, the pleasure and pain really relate to, you see, the luminant state, of which some other people wrongly translate, in fact, widely, but wrongly translate as appearance. If you've read some of those books, they call it appearance, but it's the opposite of appearance. It's disappearance, because you become the white. You are the white light. Do you know what I mean? You don't see it. It doesn't appear to you because you are it. And when you appear, when you are a moonlight, a limitless moonlight, you feel. You don't have a feeling of having a body at all. You just are a state of limitless moonlight. There's a little irritation in that state. There's a slight irritation. And the instincts that are associated with it in a normal person who hasn't trained to their mind to be aware of such subtle places in their, such bardos, such gaps in their mind, there are, I think, 40 instincts, or no, I was mixed, 33, either 33 or 40. I always forget which is which. But there's all these instincts which are associated with irritation and ill will and negative, a little bit negative, anger. It's the male thing. It's like a male level. Then the solar level is more feminine. And then there's more, desire in that one. So that's associated with the lust and greed and craving and desire. And then the neutral one is the dark state I call immanence. Because it's like something else is about to happen, about to wake up into clear light. And so he's connecting that. That's why he comes up with the Great Seal here. Okay, never mind. Enough on that. Now you all know, and by the way, I don't want to hear people say, oh, emptiness, that's so advanced. Oh, I can't understand that. Oh, no. That's some scholars, they read that, and lamas. No way, you could all understand emptiness. It's very easy to understand. It just means everything is only relative. And then the way we will cling to something, it's like, that's a real thing. As my old Mongolian teacher used to say, people think they're real, and they're not wrong. Everybody is real. The problem is they tend to think they're really real. And that's when it becomes a problem. That's the exaggeration, and that's the imposition and the investment, the imposition, the projection of an absolute into everything that one thinks one recognizes, so that sort of it anchors one's recognition. Oh, a human being. Oh, yeah, because that they are absolute human being. Oh, Bob Thurman. I'm absolutely Bob Thurman. Oh, yes, I'm absolutely me. That can pop out in us the way we interact with things. And so that's the thing. Then religious fanatics, it's God becomes absolute, and materialist nothingness becomes absolute. So there is this tendency in our insecurity and fear of openness to interrelating to everything. There is this way of wanting to shut down, you see, and as if that will help. And Buddha's message is actually the best way is total openness. Because then that way You're totally safe. That's the ultimate security, is total openness. Any kind of harm come towards you, it goes right through you, type of thing. Okay, hey, noble one. At that time, structures such as bridges, temples, cathedrals, huts, and stupas will seem to shelter you for a moment, but don't cling to them at length. Since your mind lacks a body, it cannot settle down. You feel cold, you become angry and distraught, and your awareness seems erratic, volatile, and unsteady. Then you will have the thought, now I have died, what can I do? Your heart will feel cold and weak. You will feel fierce and boundless suffering. The fact is, you must travel, and cannot be attached to any one place. So don't worry about it, and let your mind come to rest. From now on, you have no food, except for what is dedicated for you. Yeah, that's what reminded me about the missionary, Father Joseph, maybe, I think, in Bhutan. What is dedicated for you. There is no certainty about your friends. These are signs of your mental body wandering in the existence becoming between. Your present joys and sorrows are determined by your evolutionary momentum. When you see your lands, friends, loved ones, and your own corpse, and you think, now I have died, what can be done? At that time, your mental body feels greatly stressed. Then you think, because remember we're in this how to find the new body, how nice it would be to have a new body. So you see, that's our thing. We're so attached to being boundaried. We don't understand the noble truth of suffering, that any such mode of being is bound to be suffering. But when we misunderstand that, one of the reasons we misunderstand that is we don't believe it, because we think, well, at least sometimes I'm not suffering when everything is around me is okay, so that can't be so. And there's so many things I know about that would really make me suffer outside of my boundary. So this is impossible. How would it be that I could be safe if I have all 100% wide open? Body, speech, and mind. What would that mean? And so we project the danger outside, right? And that's why he calls the first noble truth of suffering. He calls it a noble truth, meaning it is not true for someone who is normally self-centered. Not bad. I'm not saying that nobody's saying that's bad. Just sort of the normal programming. Noble means someone who has had a moment of, at least one moment, of real empathy, of really feeling they are someone else as well as themselves. And to have that, the key is you don't leave feeling yourself. If you've ever been really deeply in love, it could happen with a newborn. It can happen with all kinds of ways. The human being's sense of identification is not itself an absolute objective thing that just naturally comes with being a human being. It's an earned thing. It's a conditioned thing. It's a learned thing, that we feel like we're us, that we identify with ourselves. Right? They have all these studies of infant childhood that don't distinguish between their mouth and the breast and so on, right? And so it's a learned thing that I'm just me over on this side, That's learned. And then we have these moments of slippage where we identify completely strongly with others. And when we do, we sometimes it's bad. Maybe we get in an angry mob or something and we get really angry. Sometimes it's beautiful because there's something loving going on. And being in love fully, you don't leave yourself. You embrace the other. You identify with the other, right? So that's the thing, you see. When we first hear that it's supposed to be great to be wide open, then we think, well, the wide openness must be a separated state. So that's why you get dualistic Buddhism, where they think nirvana is something apart from the relative world. But the emptiness teaching is that nirvana is the relative world, where someone is both wide open and yet able to manifest separate emanations to be interactive in a skillful way somehow, which is inconceivable. That's paradoxical. That is self-contradictory. So that's why Buddha said, I know everything, I'm enlightened. I'm so sorry I can't explain it to you. He said, you have to figure it out for yourself. But I can help you do that. But I can't just by explaining something, it won't do, because it's going to hit a paradox. You're both everything and you're also still yourself. And even multiple selves. Body of emanation, Buddha's body of emanation. Okay. Let's see if we have questions. Let us see. So I wonder, Kurt says, I wonder if it is true that the opposite of the relative is the absolute. And that is what we are not familiar with. Hence, practice being with the absolute. Thoughts. Well, yes. Yes and no. Again, the absolute and the relative are defined as being opposite. You could simply say the relative and the non-relative. Okay? Someone might want to define that absolute is just some sort of relative thing that's particularly intense, but still relative. But that would not be the normal definition of absolute. The normal definition of absolute is not connected to the relative. Like your highly devoted theist, when they talk about the absolute creator, they mean the creator creates mysteriously, but the creator is not trammeled by all the mess of the relative. It's beyond it, right? The absolute is transcendent of the relative, etc. They say such things. Okay? So when you say practice being with the absolute, then that is, you are making a non-coherent statement. And in a way, you could make that meaningful. You could say, I'm going to be with emptiness, which is another negational statement like absolute, non-relative, ultimate, sometimes people use that term, and I'm going to meditate emptiness. But then what is emptiness? Like, in a way, one thing that's absolute is, in that sense, nothing is a kind of absolute. For example, is there an elephant in your room? A live elephant, not an image of an elephant. Is there a live elephant in your room? Okay. You look around the room. I don't see any of you really looking, because you know there's no room for a live elephant. So what that means is there's a non-elephant in your room, you could say. But actually, luckily, a non-elephant, it doesn't take up any space there, so it isn't really meaningful to say that the non-elephant is in the room. You can say it, though, and you could make a meaning out of it. So you right now, every single one of us is being with the non-elephant in the room, right? So we could say the non-elephant is the opposite of the elephant. So it's like, since the elephant is a relative being with a trunk and tusks and blah, 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 then the non-elephant doesn't have any of those things. And the non-elephant actually doesn't relate to an elephant, except in our conceptuality. And it's a way of describing that we didn't find an elephant. But we didn't find the absolute non-elephant. You never do find it, because it isn't there. It's just, the only thing, you find it when you don't find the elephant, that's all. By not finding the elephant, you find the non-elephant, or you can call that finding the non-elephant, but actually you don't find anything. You just open your mind from having considered a possibility of there being an elephant. Your mind is then open, and the room is there open, therefore. So you could be in an empty room in that sense. But on the other hand, the emptiness of the room, in one way, is just again your concept, because the real deep understanding of emptiness, you are also the emptiness. So the non-elephant is not getting in your way. So in a way, you're not really with it, except in your conceptuality. Do you follow me? So that's why you can't explain these things, because our dualistic verbalization thing is not adequate to encompass reality. It's adequate to bring us to the brink of it, but it's not adequate to encompass it. For example, most important thing you can do in Buddhist practice, really, and well, of course, the most important thing you can just be nice, be compassionate, be open-minded. Those that you can put easy things like that. But the most important practice you can do is try to find yourself. Not an elephant, but yourself. Try to find it, meaning look inside yourself with full, absolute effort. But we could say absolute effort, meaning the strongest possible effort we can make. But that's, of course, it isn't really absolute because it's relational, but we can use absolute in that way as emphasis. Someone says, "You want a cup of tea?" Absolutely, you can say. I'm thirsty, And so the point is, if you really try to find yourself, the report has come down, but they're open-minded. The report has come down that you won't find anything. All sorts of things that you will find that you might be candidates for being yourself, they will dissolve under further analysis. And on top of which, luckily, and it's interesting, like Daniel Dennett, great philosopher, he has a book called Consciousness Solved, where or something like explained, that's it, Consciousness Explained. And in a way, he does a quest for Daniel Dennett, and he doesn't find anything. So then his explanation is it's just a bunch of epiphenomenal constructions, consciousness itself. And therefore, what he really discovered, he thinks, is nothing. And then he plans to go there. There'll be no Daniel Dennett after he dies. He's confident. Right? So, because he's a materialist. He's a very card-carrying, dogmatic materialist. Nihilist, that is to say, about the mind. But the point is, when you don't discover anything when you're looking for yourself, that you don't die. It doesn't destroy you not to find yourself. Because the looking process is a relational person who is looking, which you can call yourself. But then when you fail to find it as something that is objectively in yourself, that changes your whole way of experiencing yourself, if you follow me. So you could say that's being with the absolute, selflessness, but in a way, it really is only being your relative self, you could say, is being with the absolute one. If you have an experience, there's a danger there when you look for yourself. The report is of experts in altered states, in meditational treatises and scientific documents that describe different possible meditative states, which are very, very elaborate and detailed and thorough. And they all describe that what will happen is you will have an experience of yourself, or rather they will call it yourself, but you will have an experience of being a vast space. You'll feel I am this space, but you won't even have an I am to go with it. You will disappear into this space temporarily. And there's a danger then of saying, okay, this is myself, by kind of an inference at the event, at the threshold. And that will make you become very attached to that state. And that will make you, will become a trap for you, almost like a nihilistic trap, where you will be stuck in a kind of unconsciousness for a long time, but it will still end up being temporary because it's still not the absolute. Because if you experience it, even if you experience it by not being the previous you that you thought you were, you're still experiencing it. There's a boundary. You entered the experience through this and that meditative technique and concentrative attainment. And therefore, it's a relational state. It is not the absolute. And that is a kind of danger about emptiness. But for a deep yogi who meditates it. So even there, you're not being with the absolute. When you are being with the absolute is when that space-like equipoised samadhi, which is a supremely important experience, but it's not an experience for staying in it. It's an experience for bringing it to where it and your experience of yourself as a responsible, relational, interconnected being and that spaciousness are fused together in your awareness because you have developed the cognitive dissonance tolerance enlightenment that is called Buddhahood. Okay? Otherwise, if that was the absolute and it was something different from the relative, and it was more real than the relative, because the relative is unreal and it is real, then it would destroy the relative. And it would just be a matter of everybody trying to get people out of the relative into there. And then they'd be free there forever. And that would be great because it would be easy. It might seem easier to do that than being free in place by bringing that infusion with this. That would be being with, that might be being with the absolute, maybe. But point is, that's indescribable. You can call anything you want, but in a rational way. And you need that rational. We need that. Okay? Yeah, consciousness explained. Someone put it up there for the others. When I die, there will no longer be a me. Isn't necessarily materialist. Because what I think I am, me, is only relative. I won't be reborn. Something I have no clue of is reborn. Well, yes, but you know something? You could make that same argument when you were 18 or 10 years old. You were going, I, this and that. And people understood what you were doing, and you were considered a responsible person, and you were organizing your behavior about I do nice things, I don't do bad things, or not usually, etc., etc. And you had no idea that same I would be referring to you now if you're 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old. You had the I you had when you were 10 has no idea it's going to be I, the 80-year-old. No way does it have that idea. Or does it have the idea that it will be I, the Buddha? I'm Buddha. Occasionally he says, I'm a Buddha. What about you? Like when one of the first people he met who wanted to know what was his trip, who was another religious seeker. He said, well, what are you? Who's your teacher? And he said, I'm the original, he says. I'm my own teacher, he said. Swayambhu. I'm my own teacher. And the guy said, oh, that's nice. I'm a Jain, that particular guy said. And he told, Nirgrantha was the old name for Jain. And he went off to see his teacher. And he didn't quite get what Buddha was saying. When Buddha didn't say he had a teacher, he said, I'm a Swayambhu. I'm original. I'm my own teacher. He didn't really realize what he meant by that. So there Buddha was using I. I don't think actually he used the pronoun, but he used it. But he knew that he was referring to himself when he was answering the question. So implicitly there was an I there. So you can make that same argument. So if you're reborn as a being that doesn't have language, then you won't have a pronoun to refer to yourself. If you were born as a Chinese, you will learn to say "wo" eventually. You will never say "I." Actually, "I" means love in Chinese. I love you means 我爱你. 我爱你. That means I love you. So I means love there. It doesn't mean I. And even in English, I can mean the I, as well as the pronoun. And the business with language is very tricky and interesting. Okay, so I'm sorry that argument would also hold within a single lifetime. So, Sri Bob, you mentioned the 3 parts of the subtle body and the 5 states of something. Forgive me, I cannot keep up. Could you please restate those? Yeah, sure. The 3 parts of the subtle body are channels, it's nerve channels, energies in the nerves, moving around in the channels, and drops. Actually, I didn't mention all 3. I got distracted. Drops, like hormones, bindu, subtle chemicals, what they call drops, and fluids in a sense, and those are the 3 parts of the subtle body, and the subtle mind are just those 3 lights. And because the subtle body it's just a nerve, in a way, it's just a nervous system, and the being who has withdrawn from their coarse 5 senses, and they don't feel touch, they don't hear, they don't smell, they don't taste, they don't see, and they have still their mental consciousness. But when the mental consciousness is inside the subtle nervous system and it is not connected to the external senses, then it is in then its mind is only these 3 meditative states, you could say, of the moonlit, sunlit, and dark state. And those 3 states, however, are not noticed by an untrained person, a non-adept person who hasn't found the more subtle aspects of their own awareness. And so what will happen to the person when they are sort of swirling around inside their consciousness is, in the central nervous system, is they will be batted around by the 80 instincts, what they call. The 80 instinctual thing, which are like little Pac-Men. They're like ding, 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 ding. They're a weird list. One of them is called biting, chewing, sucking, kissing, embracing. Then another one is greed, hatred, irritation. So there's sort of mental things and even physical things. So you have to think the physical thing, since there's no mouth to bite with, it's like a kind of whatever sort of a sense of being something wants to swallow something else, and like a surge, like a pack is why I think like Pac-Man, in one of those video games. And these instincts are very distressing and disturbing. And then when finally what hitting the clear light for this untrained person is in other words, because you're not dead yet when you're inside that, so you're not in the Bardo yet. You only hit the Bardo when you hit the clear light. And when you hit the clear light, what that means is you go into that deepest, super subtle, where mind and body duality doesn't bear, and body is just a kind of really subtle energy. It's not atomic. So it's really super, subparticulate, I like to call it nowadays. And that subparticulate energy is embedded with the clear light, which is in infinite mind. But the being that is untrained like that just can't distinguish between that and being unconscious, because they can't expand everywhere and they're frightened of it. And then, bam, they leave the coarse body and they will hit the Bardo. And sometimes, you remember they say sometimes you'll stay a few days in a state like a coma, but it's an out-of-body coma, right? And that's where you are there. And you can't bear the consciousness of being everything with the things being there. So you're sort of in a consciousness of as if it's just a vast space. And then you can be called resting in the clear light, but in a way, you're not really able to open that much to get into the clear light. So you're just pretty much unconscious. You're not consciously unconscious. Put it that way. Okay? And then the minute you leave that, that's the between. Because you don't, in the between, to be born in the between, you don't have to come back up through 8 states where you come back like you're developing a coarse body. You might shoot up through the 80 instincts, but they might still be pushing you around. And then the body you have is very unstable, so you don't feel secure in it. And then these 80 instincts are there. So, but you don't notice the dark light, sunlight, and moonlight. You don't notice those. Maybe some flashing. Okay? So that, at least that's it. Now in my translation, there are other people who have things. I have some tables in the introductory study because I think it's very, very useful for people who want to develop this, how to deal with these things. You see they have here on page on pages 42 and 43 of the stages of death, dissolution, and experiences at figure 8, and in figure 9, the aggregates and wisdoms corresponding to the early stages of death. You know, about how you lose your eye sense first, your ear sense second, your nose sense third, your tongue sense and body sense together fourth. And they all go, and then all you have left is the mind sense. Like when you're in a dream, you don't have any of those other senses. The mind sense reproduces them immediately to make you feel you're in a familiar place in the dream. And so rising in the thing. And then on this side, you have earth to water, water to fire, fire to wind. Earth to water is mirage. Water to fire, you have an inner visionary sign like in your mind's eye with your mental consciousness. When earth goes to water, you have a mirage-like experience or hallucinatory experience. Water to fire, you feel you're suffused with smoke and you're having trouble breathing at that point, so you feel all smoked out. Fire to wind, you have an experience like swarm of fireflies, flashing fireflies. And then wind to consciousness or space, it's like a last clear candle flame. Seems to be objectively there, and that's in your mind's eye. Then you have then gross consciousness into luminance, the fifth dissolution. Clear moonlit sky, luminance to radiance, clear sunlit sky, radiance to immanence, clear pitch darkness, immanence to translucency, clear light of the clear pre-dawned gray sky. So gray is, we'd think, combination of light and dark, but gray is not translucent. So like a translucent gray, a gray glass or something is more like what it is. But who knows what it is? You can't describe. It's indescribable. But that's a simile. Okay. And if there are other people, but plenty of other people have these patterns, and they're very standard and they're very useful. And actually, you know, for example, if one is preparing to die or preparing someone else to die or just being a yogi of this type, like all of Andrew's students are, both for oneself and to help others, then knowing these 8 things is really, really important. I didn't start out with them though, because Andrew wanted to focus on this 3rd level where you're going to thinking about getting reborn. And we already, you know, in earlier sessions we worked on that. But it's really, really important in case you haven't worked on it. And then when you fall asleep at night, you can rehearse it once you memorize it. And you can say, well, now I'm seeing a mirage, and now I'm seeing, oh no, I'm in a mist or a smoky room place. And now I see swarms of little sparkles going. And now I see it's like a single candle flame. And then that goes into a moonlit space, sunlit space, darklit space. And now I'm going to rest in clear light. And that's very good to do, because I think then you are programming yourself using your inference, your reasoning. You're programming yourself when you go unconscious into sleep. You consider that to be the state of immanence, the state of near attainment or immanence, the 3rd state of the subtle mind. And it's all dark. And you go unconscious in that state. It's some part of that state. The latter part of that state, you go unconscious. And when you're unconscious, then you kind of open at the subparticulate level. You're no longer your subparticulate energy mind pure energy mind is like a light mind, really, and it's wide open to be refreshed by the infinite power of the clear light. So it's like you're plugged into that. You're not just lying in a dark space of nothing, which would not give you any refreshment, would it now, if it was nothing? You would not feel more rested when you wake up than when you fell asleep. But actually, you do feel renewed and rested when you wake up if you have a good sleep. And that's because you're so much into clinging to your boundary, because you're so scared of the world, because you're so sensitive. And actually sensible to be scared of like knives and Mack trucks running at you and nasty people, sure. But you're so over scared of the whole thing that you can't just open your being unless you're unconscious. So that maybe accounts for actually why we have to sleep. Because it's too tiring to be boundaried against a universe that actually is completely flowing in and out of us all the time. It's too strenuous. It's like, it's like Atlas, but instead of holding a globe on top of your head like at Rockefeller Center in New York, an empty globe, you're holding off the universe all day long. And keeping it at its distance, its proper distance, what you think of as proper distance, which means not invading your being. Okay? So that's really interesting. Even when we're alive. That's really interesting.
This episode of the Bob Thurman Podcast was brought to you in part from Tibet House US Menla Online. And to enjoy the full recording and video retreat of this podcast, please visit menla.org and their online section, or bobthurman.com. The online retreat is now available to enjoy from anywhere, anytime, via teachable.com. Thanks for tuning in, and Tashi Direk.